Next, I would like to call up Rosie Williams, Tristan Epps, and Darius Boxley, members of the Black Student Union.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Our job today is to introduce our new president, Dr. Christopher Howard. Dr. Chris Howard is the 8th president of Robert Morris University and one of the youngest college presidents in the United States. He is a distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and as a Rhodes Scholar, earned a doctorate in politics from Oxford University. He also has an MBA with distinction from Harvard Business School. Dr. Howard's service to his country began as a helicopter pilot, then as an intelligence officer, where he was assigned to the elite Joint Special Operations Command. After 9/11, he served in Afghanistan in the Air Force Reserve and was awarded the Bronze Star. He also served as the Reserve Air Attaché to Liberia.
Before coming to RMU, Dr. Howard is president of Hampton-Sydney College, a Virginia liberal arts school and one of the oldest colleges in the country. During Dr. Howard's 6.5 years as president, Hampton-Sydney's enrollment, retention, and alumni giving all increased, and the college produced its first Truman and Goldwater Scholars in 20 years. Before that, Dr. Howard was vice president for leadership and strategic initiatives and director of the Honors College Leadership Center at the University of Oklahoma. President Barack Obama appointed Dr. Howard to the National Security Education Board, which provides grants, scholarships, and fellowships for study or program development in languages and regions critical to national security. VA Secretary Robert McDonald appointed him to the National Advisory Committee for MyVA, the most ambitious program in the history of the VA for transforming service to delivery veterans.
Dr. Howard has been named one of the 20 most interesting college presidents by the best schools. He is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Young Presidents Organization, a Henry Crown Fellow at the Aspen Institute, and on the board of directors of the American Council on Education and the Board of Regents at Baylor University. Dr. Howard won the Campbell Trophy, the highest academic award in the country for a senior college football player, and is a member of the Verizon Academic All-American Hall of Fame. Dr. Howard is a co-founder and trustee of the Impact Young Lives Foundation, a not-for-profit organization that brings South African college students of color to the U.S. for summer educational and cultural tours. His wife, Barbara Noble Howard, is the foundation's executive director and a native of Johannesburg, South Africa, where the couple met. The Howards have 2 sons in college, Cohen and Joshua. Thank you.
You know it's bad news. It takes 3 people to introduce you. Ooh, Lord, y'all need to get an A in your classes for enduring that, and you all are very kind. I know that cherry cobbler's kicking in, and those nods are coming, but just bear with me for a few minutes. Let me start off and say thank you to Victoria for a great job. Don't start talking about hip-hop around Victoria, because she has a thing or two to tell you about that. Khalid, thank you for this Black History Mobile Museum. If you haven't made it over there, get over there. It's very, very good. Pieces of work written by, signed by Frederick Douglass, Marcus Garvey, Booker T. Washington, Denzel Washington. It's great, and they're playing some great hip-hop in the background, so old school and new school, I think. So get over there, and thank you, Khalid, for being a part of this. And for all the people that helped organize this event, I just want to say thank you very, very much. I guess, actually, the first thing I want to say is, how's this for school spirit? I'm just saying. I also want to thank you all who thanked me, wished me happy birthday a few days ago. February 12th was my birthday. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I live for another year, Reverend Giles. Amen. I'm 21 years old, and who would have ever said I was one of the youngest presidents, so I made it. It's quite an honor to share a birthday with Abraham Lincoln. I mean, no pressure there, right? And Charles Darwin, for that matter. And, you know, February is the month for Black History Month. And that's the reason it's Black History Month, because Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist who said agitate, 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 were born in that month. Not like some brothers and sisters say it's because it's the shortest month in the year. Some people think that we gave us the short, but that's not the case. It's because of Douglass and for Lincoln. And I had the good fortune a couple of days ago to be interviewed by Miss Olga George from KDKA, which will air tomorrow on the television. And she asked me a question along the lines of, what does it feel like to make history as the first African-American president of a private institution, university or college in Pennsylvania? What does it feel like to make history? So what I did was, ladies and gentlemen, I proceeded to tell a little bit of my story. And you'll see that tomorrow night if you tune in and see on the website. And to provide a little context, there are about 4,000 college and university presidents out there. None of us are very good, but there's a lot of us though, right? And that includes community college as well. And according to the American Council on Education, where I serve on the board, as mentioned before, about 8% are younger than the age of 50. And about 5% happen to be African American, male or female, right? And that includes historically Black colleges and universities. So I'm like a dog who speaks. Rare. Because when I walk up into place, they think I'm the offensive coordinator of the football team, not the president of the university. But having said that, by the way, the whole idea of kind of being relatively young and relatively fly, I can say fly, I'm a 1980s guy, is when I get on a plane, brother get on a plane trying to look sharp and everything, they're like, people look at me and they go, don't I know you? They want to know me. They want to think I'm somebody famous, you know? And so I've been traveling around. I was in Europe, and I've been all over the world. And depending on where I am, you know, in England, oh, you a football player? Aren't you on Arsenal, mate? And then here is like, don't you play for whatever? Recently, I was in South Africa, and I promise to behave after this, Victoria. I'm actually going to give a serious speech. But I was in South Africa, and my good friend Yuvan Naidu, Indian South African guy, and his daughter looked at me, and she says, you look like a rapper. And I said, I started from the bottom, now I'm here. I started from the bottom. PG version, I'm not gonna do the rest. I told you I like Drake. But anyway, I'm just kidding. But what I did with Olga, to respond to her question, I just told my story. I told a little bit about my history. His story is my story. And, you know, in the tradition of African Americans, we are storytellers. That's what we do. We tell stories. You know, coming from the old school, I'm coming from that tradition where my father and mother told me stories like, yeah, when I went to school, son, it was 3 miles to school. Uphill, both ways, in the snow. Mom, you were in Texas. How could you walk uphill both ways in the snow? There was no snow. But you know, stories are what we come from. But I drew inspiration from the stories and the adversity that my ancestors went through to make me the man that I am today. I drew inspiration from the stories of my ancestors that allowed me to stand before you as the 8th president of Robert Morris University, and I'm very proud. I also drew inspiration from those folks that we memorialized during Black History Month. I'll get into that a little bit in a second, to become the 8th president of this university. I drew inspiration from Black history as well. I start off in a very simple place. I am the great-great-grandson of a slave. I am the great-great-grandson of a slave named Amos Howard. He was 15 years old when the Civil War ended. I used to see pictures of him when I was a kid. He was a bad-looking brother, silver hair, big mustache, lived to be 105 years old. I like those genes. I'm selling my DNA decoding for anybody who wants some of that. But I thought about how it must have been for Amos, who was no different than the chairs that you sit upon now. He was, as we learn in your constitutional law courses, he was chattel. He was property. He was owned by. You know, years ago, I was at Oxford University on a Rhodes Scholarship, and I was looking through a store, and I saw these bins with all the crest of these families in England, Scottish families, even Irish families, United Kingdom, British families. And I saw a crest that said Howard on it. Then I picked it up, and I said, I'm going to buy this. And I said, no, these people bought me. and I put it down. And I'm not changing my name to X or Shabazz just yet. How's that for public relations, right? Chris Shabazz Howard, no. But it's not lost on me in my story that my great-great-grandfather was a slave. His grandson, my grandfather, Casey Howard, was a sharecropper. Now, this is interesting. I'm telling you stories, and I love it. Is it Tina? Tammy, I'm sorry. No. You gotta get that right, Tammy. You really did a great job. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you very much. You're a powerful sister. You're a powerful sister, and I thank you for your words. But as you made a comment about, as you spoke to people who happen to be white and people happen to be black, and the answers were kind of similar, generic. So I tell you, this story, is my history, but a lot of us share this. And in many ways, actually, black history is American history, and America's history is black history. In fact, let's just say that. Black history, let's try it again. You repeat after me. Black history is America's history. And America's history is black history. Now that's leadership. So my great-great-grandfather's grandson was Casey Howard, and he was a sharecropper. We used to call him Big Daddy. He's passed away about 10 years, 15 years ago. And I was riding with, of course, you guessed it, Big Mama, out in East Texas. This is maybe about 10 years ago, shortly after my grandfather died, after Big Daddy died. And Big Mama, who was this big lady, Big Daddy was little, Big Mama was big. But she's still alive. And Big Mama, we were driving around through the rural part of East Texas, and I saw this place, and my Big Mama goes, we used to live, my father had 7 brothers and sisters. She said, we used to live over there and sharecrop on that. Sharecropping means get ripped off. That means you work on the land and you pick cotton and you share the crop and the wages of the crop with the person who owns the land. It's another form of basically slavery. So my Big Mama was saying, we used to live over there, and then we drove a little bit further in the van, was with my mom, my dad, my 2 sons, my niece, my brother, and my sister-in-law. And we drove a little further, and my Big Mama goes, we used to live over there too, and drove a little bit further. And you can see how this happened. We used to live over there, and by the time we had driven around for 2 hours, my Big Daddy had lived in 15 different places. Papa was a Rolling Stone. And so I said, after 15 places, I said, Big Mama, why did we live in all these places, right? And she said, it's very simple. Your Big Daddy had a habit of telling white people they were wrong. He would get to the point where he would go to receive the wages for the sharecropping. And by the way, Marvin Howard, my father, used to sharecrop in the summer, all summer. They'd all live in a small little shack, right, for 3 months, and they'd get up and they'd pick cotton all day, right? And so that's my aunts and uncle. That's just one generation removed from me. But that's my Big Daddy. My Big Mama was saying, he'd show up to get the wage for the crop, and they'd say, well, Casey, this is how much you get. And he'd say, that's not right. I should be getting this. I kept my numbers. I should be getting this much. And you know how that went down in Texas in 1925, 1938. Get that off my land. Therefore, 15 houses later. But Casey was a proud man. Let's be careful as people of color here. Let's not think that all of our people were just angels. That's not the case. We know. We know. But he was a good man. He was a good man. And he ended up getting a job at Lone Star Gas. And he became a factory worker, which is great to say up here in steel country. And that changed everything for us. That got us out of sharecropping and got us into a home. It's the first generation of my family that had a modicum of wealth. Black folk have a very simple way of doing things in this world, unfortunately. We work until the day we die and don't have a heck of a lot of wealth. That's very unfortunate and very true. The average wealth of the white family is like $100,000. For a black family, it's like $10,000 or $11,000. You know the difference between being wealthy and rich, right? A wealthy person owns the team, and so the basketball player is rich, but the person who pays the basketball player is wealthy, right? That's the difference. But my grandfather started establishing a little bit of wealth for our family. So I learned from that. Those are the stories that bathe over me. A couple more stories. I don't want to go too long here. So Marvin and Carolyn Howard were my parents. I told you a little bit about Marvin. He was sharecropping in Mount Pleasant, Texas, and he managed to do very, very well in school, but he didn't do as well as my mama. Caroline Howard was born in Central Texas near Waco, and she grew up doing the same thing, sharecropping with Sam and Ida. She did not get electricity in her house until she was in 9th grade. She never had indoor plumbing. Even when I was in college at the United States Air Force Academy, ladies and gentlemen, I would go back to my grandma's house and my granddad's house in Central Texas, and you know what, the Sears catalog was good for lots of things. I don't want to be too graphic here, but when you have an outhouse, you do what you got to do. But I'm just saying, that's my history. That's where I came from. Those are my people. So my mother, Carolyn, grew up, no electricity, up through 9th grade. She was washing dishes when Kennedy was killed because my grandmother was a dishwasher and she wanted to give my mom a break. Now, I like to be silky smooth and everything. I told you guys that. I shake my mother's hand and it's rough. Her hands are rough. She's a black woman. Her hands are rough. She's dug her hands in the earth in many ways to create a way for us, right? Very, very powerful. Every time now she get a nice little pedicure though, a little manicure, don't get it wrong now. But I think about what she went through washing dishes for my grandmother when Kennedy died, picking cotton in the summer because she could not get a job in a restaurant, as a waiter or at a record store. Remember records, y'all? Actually, record store, something like that, or clothing store. She couldn't get that because she was a black woman in the South. But yet and still, my mother graduated valedictorian in her high school. You can go ahead and clap for that. Our history was not lost on her. She knew that people had sacrificed for her to have that opportunity, and she did not squander it. Whilst my father was only salutatorian in his class, so in his school, because mom, got to give it up for moms. But that's what I came from. Now, let's fast forward to when I was born. My mom was 7 months pregnant with me when my dad went to Vietnam to fight for his country as an Army lieutenant. He actually was given the opportunity not to go to combat because I had an older brother, a year older than me, and my mom was pregnant. He says, no, I'm going to go serve. So my mom waddles to the airport, 7 months pregnant with me, sends my dad to Vietnam, and goes and spends what was customary at that time, 6 months with her parents and six months with her in-laws. She goes to Mount Pleasant, Texas, East Texas, which was Klan country, right? This was not a very progressive place. They're not recovering at that point. And the doctor, the OBGYN, happened to be white, and she would go into the waiting room. She tells me this story. She says, Chris, they had 2 waiting rooms, black one, white one. And she said, I refuse to go to the black waiting room. So I'd walk into the white waiting room, and I'd waddle in. You can imagine the optic, my mom waddling in, 9 months pregnant with me. She said, as soon as her butt hit that seat, I'm like, Miss Howard, we'll see you right now. We'll see you right now. It was the white waiting room, and they just really felt like they needed to see her sitting amongst them. So she said, this was a great way to get an appointment, to be seen. But I was born in Mount Pleasant, Texas, February 12, 1969, the same year that this campus was born. Moon Township. That's some poetry in that, right? Let me do a play about that. I don't know. But military family, the first several years of my life, go to, my dad gets out as a captain. We go to United Parcel Service, first in Plano, Texas, then in Little Rock, Arkansas. Very mixed environment in the military, very young. Predominantly black environment in Little Rock, Arkansas. Then I moved to Plano in 1979. My mother took me into 4th grade. It was a big open classroom like this. There were no cubicle or anything like that. The whole class was sort of all together just like this. There were 2 black people in the entire place, in the entire grade, and one was leaving. That was my mom. It was just me and them. And I just come from an all black community to an all white community. And so when I sat down, can I touch your hair? Can I touch your hair? I was just a curiosity. And then you go out to recess. I know this is going back, and this is not a hater speech at all. This is just life. This is just this is my history. This is my story. People ask you, how'd you get here? Well, 4th grade, going out in the recess, and then all of a sudden the kids are like, God, N-word. Why not? You lived in Plano, Texas in 1979 with no black people around, then you use the N-word like jerk, right? So as soon as I heard it, what did I do? What would you do? That's what I was taught. I was the original angry black man. I was an angry young black kid who felt like a fish out of water for 4th grade, for 5th grade. But in Texas, you play football and all sins are forgiven, right? So I was a pretty good football player. No, I was actually a good football. I was actually a really good football. I mean, listen, me and my brother, we were really good. That helped. And we had some great people along the way that were empathetic, that were thoughtful, that were black, that were white, that were everything you can imagine. But that was the environment. So I remember hearing things when I was a kid like, we don't like black people, but we like you. And you're not really black. We could have like choreographed this, right? Yeah. I was like, well, no, you're different. No, I'm not different. You know, you just happen to know me. Things like, you know, growing up in a predominantly white community, I, you know, date girls that happen to be white, happen to be black. Dating a girl who happened to be white when I was a kid was like a James Bond movie. You had to meet, you had to jump out of a plane at 1,000 feet and land in a field and take your pack and, you know, do a rendezvous and do signals and stuff. And, you know, and that was just for my mom, you know, just to make sure I allowed to. I'm just telling you my history, folks. I'm just telling you my history, right? But yet and still, my senior year, so June 1st, 1987, in the largest graduating class in the state of Texas, because we do everything big in Texas, I was the class president, and I stood in front of 1,380 of my closest friends. That's my class. My class was that big. I'm not talking about the school. That was my class. And I said, thank you for judging me, the content of my character rather than the color of my skin. America's history is black history. Black history is America's history. Let me rewind real quick, and then I'm going to jump forward. Because I told you that those people that we memorialize in Black History Month are the reason that I'm here. When I was in 3rd grade at Romine High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, I went to the library and I saw a book. Of course I saw a book. It was a library. That's not exactly that illogical, now is it? But the book was about Booker T. Washington. I picked it up. I went to the library, and she happened to be white. And I said, is this George Washington's cousin? And she said, no, but I think you ought to read it. So I went home. I was a pretty big reader then, still am now. I started reading about this guy, Booker T. Washington. And I said, wow, this guy was an educator. He started the Tuskegee Institute. He had a friend named George Washington Carver that could make a peanut do anything. I said, who is this? This guy is bad. My mom was actually cooking, and thank you. You should thank me for that fried chicken y'all got today too, because you only eat like that when the president comes out. So you're welcome. No. No, thank you, the Parkhurst, for the wonderful meal that they prepared for us. It was really wonderful. But I was sitting there, my mom was actually happened to be frying some chicken. It was so funny. And I'm reading this book. I'll never forget. I'm reading this book, and I'm looking at my mom. I'm like, Mom, did you know Booker T? Did you know? I was going on. And she said, Chris, and oh, by the way, I went to Booker T. Washington High School. Booker T. Washington High School? Really? Wow. And your father went to Booker T. Washington High School as well. Really? Now, little I know that all the black schools back then were called Booker T. Washington High School. That didn't matter. But what mattered was there was a black man who looked like me, talked like me, who was serious-minded, who made a difference in the society, and I had never in my life read anything like that. I didn't know people like that existed. So what did I do? What's our librarian's name, Dave? Was it Tim? Tim Slack. He should show this to all of his compatriots. 'Cause I went back to the library is what I did. And that wonderful librarian kept giving me books. The next week it was Frederick Douglass. The next week it was W.B. Du Bois. Then it was Ida B. Wells, and it was Marcus Garvey.
Actually, the library has 2 display cases up right now with books dedicated to Black History Month.
Amen. Those books became me. I became those books. I got Ebony magazine. Remember back in the day when Ebony was like that big? Y'all remember? I got Jet magazine when Jet used to be an actual magazine, not online. And those same people that I was reading about, there'd be stories about them and issues, and there would be people that were winning roles in government or what have you in politics, and I would cut out, and I made a little scrapbook, and I put all these articles in there, and I kept it, and by the time I was like a senior in high school, I had like 4 or 5 of these things, just articles I would cut out about Mayor Stokes or L. Douglas Wilder being the first black governor of Virginia. It became part of my story, part of who I was. So I carried all that through high school, went to the Air Force Academy, had a great experience. Fast forward to, let's get way later, Hampton-Sydney College and becoming the 24th president of the 10th oldest college in America. I was at the University of Oklahoma, and I said, I want to go to a smaller liberal arts college and maybe serve as leader. So I did what young people do. I Googled top 100 liberal arts colleges, and the list came out. And the list had 100 schools on it, and one of them was Hampton-Sydney, one of them was Washington, Lee, Amherst, Williams, etc. And I looked at these schools, and there were 4 of them that were hiring, and I thought, which is the one that I think makes the most sense for me? And so I ended up applying to this place called Hampton-Sydney College. And the reason that this is interesting about our history as a country, I didn't know all the history of Hampton-Sydney. I didn't know the history of that area. It was part of the American Revolution. During the Civil War, the president of the college mustered the troops, the students, to fight on the side of the Confederacy. I remind them that was a losing team. They fought on the side of the Confederacy. The president, next to my house I ended up living in, would drill the students as they got ready to go to war, to fight for the Confederacy. I didn't know that when I applied. The civil rights movement went right through Prince Edward County. Prince Edward County, in 1951, a woman named Barbara Johns. If you don't remember anything about my talk, just go Google Barbara Johns. This is a 16-year-old strong black woman. We can't say she was a girl because she was a 16-year-old woman. She organized against the protests of her principal and teachers, her fellow students, to walk out of the Moton Museum School, named after R.R. Moton, the second head of the Tuskegee Institute, who's from that area. And she was protesting the fact that the white school and the black school were not equal in terms of their accoutrements, their books, infrastructure as well. So they walked out, and that became one of the plaintiff cases for the Brown versus Board of Education in 1956. But rather than integrate the schools in Virginia in that period, they had something called massive resistance. And in that county, right down the street where I became the 24th president, they shut down all the schools, all public education for 5 years. That's where I went. That's where I went. And when I was named president, I remember getting a note from a woman. It said, Dr. Howard, I never thought we'd ever have a black president, and I sure as hell didn't think we'd have a black president of Hampton-Sydney College. But good luck. Bless your heart. This is not a disparaging comment about Hampton-Sydney. It was a wonderful place, and this is where I finished my talk as we look into the future. Those are my roots. Let me look into the future. So that school in 1992 was 2% non-white male. When I arrived, it's a men's college. When I arrived, it was 13% non-white male, and when I left, it was about 20% non-white male. We had our first black valedictorians, we've had 2 black valedictorians in 235 years. One of them I helped to recruit and help get a Truman Scholarship, right? We developed an office of inclusiveness, not just diversity. I wish Yasmin was here. Is Yasmin here? Oh, okay, all right, Yasmin. Diversity is important, but we offered up an offer of inclusiveness because we wanted, diversity is about counting numbers and inclusiveness is about making sure that numbers count, right? And that's what we wanted to do. We have plenty of work to do at Hampton-Sydney, great institution, and thank God for all the people of all colors and races and creeds and what we did at Hampton-Sydney. I think we made a difference. But what chapter are we gonna write here at Robert Morris University? Who's gonna be our next Theodore Jones? Who's gonna be our next Rex Crawley? I think I'm looking in these young people's eyes. Dave Jamison, that's not you. Provost Jamison does a great job. But I think I'm looking into the eyes of the next Rex Crawley, the next Theodore Jones. They're gonna make a difference at this institution. What are we gonna say 5, 7, 10 years from now about the RMU story, about inclusiveness, about diversity, about our history? That's my charge to you because the one thing that presidents can't do is anything alone. Being a president is a little bit like running a cemetery. You can tell everybody to get, just because you tell everybody to get up, doesn't mean they're gonna move. Let that one sink in. That's a pretty good one. When you're driving home, you're gonna be like, oh, I get it, because they can't stand, I get it now. I understand. But in all seriousness, I join in your arms, and we sing, lift every voice and sing, and we sing, we shall overcome. And we might even sing a little Drake, who knows? But we're gonna write the next chapters in a very inclusive way. Our declaration of the Declaration of Integrity that our students initiated and started, which I support 100%. John Michaelenko, great job supporting your students on that. What a great start we have. What a great group of leaders, young and old, that we have on this campus to write the next chapter. So thank you all very, very much for indulging me. I hope I haven't gone too long. But God bless you. God bless Robert Morris University. God bless Black History Month. Thank you very much.